Hi everyone, and it is the 23rd of April, and I wanted to do a recap of the comics that came out last week, which was Wednesday the 18th. And so I want to start with, of course, the elephant. Was Superman's 80th birthday and coincided with issue number 1000 for Action Comics. So if you haven't picked that up and you're a Superman fan, I should definitely suggest picking that up. It obviously will be a collector's item. And on top of that, they did 8 different covers. So they did a cover for each decade, and I'll show the some of the covers up here. I ended up choosing the Christopher Reeve cover, so I'll show that first. But yeah, I'm going to show my age here, but I remember seeing the original Superman and Superman 2 in the theaters, and I remember I think I saw Superman for my birthday actually. But there was there had never been really effects like that at that time, and Christopher Reeve, whenever he he entered the screen, it was it blew the screen up. I mean, he was very charismatic, which the new Man of Steel, Justice League, etc. He doesn't really have that kind of charisma. Although I have to say, at the end of Justice League, where the other the two directors, the second director, I probably directed him, and his colors were brighter, and he says, "This guy's still bothering you," and he's laughing at the end, and I have to say that was more Superman than I had seen a Superman movie for quite a while. So it's too bad that that whole thing with Snyder I think really destroyed DC for right now, until they reboot it. But anyway, so going back to the comics, so this comic, of course, is $8, so it's not cheap. I guess 50 cents for each year. So it's $8 and it's 80 pages, so it's also a page for each year. So people are going to have a really hard time when he becomes 500 years old. So a $250 comic and 500 pages of story. But anyway, so they're little snippets. The book is little snippets. It starts out with Dan Jurgens, who's doing Action Comics right now, and his was very good. I thought he was. It's basically about Superman's going to have Superman Day, where they're going to give him an award and things to that effect, but he's so preoccupied with this invasion that may be happening. Meanwhile, Lois is on the phone with somebody, and she keeps saying it's Perry, but it's not. She's really on the phone with Wonder Woman, and they're going to go off and save everything so that he can enjoy his day and get his award. Which I did think they did exactly the same type of thing when he got married and was going to go on his honeymoon, and Batman brought in all of the Justice League to sit on Metropolis basically until they got back from their honeymoon, so he could feel like his city was being taken care of, and that was Batman's wedding gift to him. So it's almost the same type of thing. Marv Wolfman has one in there. Paul Dini has one in there with Mr. Mxyzptlk. Jeff Johns and Richard Donner, who did the movie, the original movie, that is. They have one called The Car, which I think is really the best one in there. It's basically about a gangster and Superman stops him by jumping in front of his car, and he smashes the car, so he brings the car to get fixed. And of course there's like no front end to it, so it's like pretty much total. And the mechanic says, well, I can fix it for you, or you can trash it. It's completely up to you. So he gets as he's trying to decide what to do with the car, Superman visits him and says, well, you're going to get a second chance. I didn't take you in, so you can either fix your life or you can trash it. So it's like an analogy for the car. So I won't tell you which way it goes, but I thought that was very, very interesting. And then the last one is Brian Michael Bendis, who is taking over the Man of Steel title. And it's funny because if you notice, almost all the way through every one of the stories, Superman has his red underwear back, which, you know, is taking off, and, you know, New 52, they took that all off, and it's obviously, even with Rebirth, you know, it's more like the movie, so he doesn't have the red underwear anymore. However, Brian Michael Bendis, at the end, in his story, he makes several remarks through characters saying that Superman is not Superman without the red underwear. So that may have been one of his stipulations for coming into DC, because I don't know if you know, Michael Bendis is he's Marvel guy. I mean, he writes all the Marvel stuff, so I don't know if he's leaving Marvel to come into DC, or if he's just taking on this one DC book and he's still writing for Marvel. They're independent contractors, the writers, so I wouldn't. He isn't. It's not. It doesn't have to be one or the other. But anyway, so he has this remark at the end of the thing. So they may be bringing back the red underwear. Who knows? I guess we'll see in the next upcoming thing. So, and they have, you know, No Justice coming up, which is a Justice League 4-picture arc or 4-issue arc, and now we have you know, the Man of Steel, and they're doing a 4-issue there, and I don't know if I think it's going to continue. But anyway, so he is taking over that book, and they have a new, almost like a doomsday enemy in there, and he's fighting both Superman and Supergirl. He's obviously got a thing against Kryptonians, and that is continuing into the Man of Steel title. So it just ends abruptly, you know, and Superman's basically getting his butt kicked, and in fact, there's one nice scene in there where, you know, the enemy throws him towards a plate glass window, you know, of a bookstore, and there's people in there, so he literally stops himself in midair, so without going through the window. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, definitely, if you're a Superman fan, just definitely check out Action Comics number 1000, and let me know in the comment section if you do pick it up, which cover you got and why. Okay, and then we're going to move into the next one. And we're going to talk about Brave and the Bold number 3. So when I found out that they were going to be doing a Brave and the Bold, but it would be, because normally Brave and the Bold is most known for Batman and Superman. So that was Brave and the Bold originally, and of course they've continued it, but they've also changed up the characters. But when I found out they were doing Brave and the Bold with Wonder Woman and Batman, I'm like, oh great, so that's perfect. Especially with where they touched on in the cartoon, where they had a little bit of a love affair possibility going on. They went out on dates like that, but you never knew, you know, what happened from there. I thought they were going to kind of go in that direction, and I really thought that's what really the movie should have been. Instead of doing Justice League, they should have done Batman and Wonder Woman, because, you know, Wonder Woman was coming off her film. They didn't know how it was going to do at the time. But at least they had two very, very established characters that had synergy, and I thought that you know, they should have just done a movie with just those two instead of bringing in all these other characters and messing it up completely. But anyway, so Brave and the Bold, when I found they were doing it, I was very excited until I started reading it. So the artwork is very good. However, they decided to go supernatural with it. And I don't know why they keep sticking Batman into these supernatural stories. That's not his thing. So, and now we're on issue 3. It's only a 6-issue series. But it's not working. It's just not working. And I'll collect the other 3 just because I started it. But I really, doesn't matter to me one way or another at this point, because it's just not working. So for Wonder Woman walking around with gods and monsters like that, that works. But for Batman walking around, it just doesn't. I mean, he's a gritty urban guy. For him to be and he's a man of science. So now we have, you know, throwing in all this magic and everything else. Just not working. So the storyline is that Diana comes to see. Diana's interrupted while having sex with Steve, and this guy says, "Oh, you need to help us because our kingdom is imprisoned, and our king just was murdered, and we need to find out who it is." So she goes to Bruce and says, "Well, you're the detective, so I need you to help me do this. So you need to come to another world with trolls and things like that, so you can figure out why this king, or who killed this king, and where, what's going on." And then there's some kind of connection to Gotham, but who knows? I don't know what that connection is. So I really don't understand part of it. But he's starting to quote lore, and he gets this rock so you can look through it, so you can see trolls that are invisible, and it's just, I would skip it. I'm recommending skip it. So if you haven't bought any of it, don't. It's not good. But the artwork's good if you just buy it for the artwork. That's one thing. But unfortunately, what they could have done with it, they didn't do. So anyway, I'll keep reporting on that one to see if it gets any better. But for right now, it's halfway through and not very good. So now we go into Batman, Tom King's Batman, and so this is the whole Batman storyline where they're doing the wedding. So now I guess they're taking a complete break and doing a whole new storyline called The Gift. So it starts out with, I guess, Green Lantern mind controlled or something to that effect, and puts his ring to his head and blows his own brains out. So anyway, you find out that there's, there is another time stream where Dick Grayson is Batman. He carries around a rifle and killing people and stuff like that, and so it's completely skewed timeline from the original timeline. So it follows Booster Gold, who is a time traveler, and he's looking for Batman. That's what his whole thing is. He's looking for Batman. When he finds Batman and realizes it's Dick, he's like, "Oh no, I guess I need to see Bruce Wayne." So and of course, Dick almost kills him. But so you find out that he saw what Flashpoint was. And so that Barry brought back his mom and everything else, and so he wanted to do the same thing for Bruce as a gift, and that's what the turn is, the gift. So, but now he says, he goes to see Bruce, and he says, "I'm gonna turn it all back," but I was, and Bruce is dancing with his mom, so obviously his parents are still alive, based on whatever Booster did to change things. And he says, "So I got to take it all back, but I just wanted you to experience life, what life could have been like if your family didn't die." And Bruce was having none of it, and decides he's gonna keep the gift. So we'll see what happens, but that's where it semi ends. Is Bruce going, I'm staying right where I am. But it's interesting that they were doing this whole thing with the wedding, and now they're completely flopping gears and changing timelines. So we'll see what happens, but it was just weird. So now we go from one wedding book to another wedding book. So whenever DC's doing something, Marvel's not far behind, and vice versa. So we're doing the wedding between Kitty Pryde and Peter, who is Colossus. So we have Colossus and Kitty Pryde, who have been on and again, off again, relationship-wise forever. And I guess finally they're going to be doing a wedding special. So naturally there's always baddies that are involved with, of course, a wedding going on. It can't ever go as planned. But I was confused because I haven't collected X-Men in a while, because truthfully most of them aren't good. In fact, most of the Marvel writing right now is not very good. So that's why you'll see very intermittent Marvel books that I collect. So what happened, so if anybody knows, let comment, but why doesn't Colossus have the striations in his armor anymore? So he's just silver now. So I don't understand what happened there. But anyways, let me know if you guys know why they changed it. So they're planning this wedding, and Kitty Pryde is now the head of the Xavier School and stuff like that. And the guys take him out for his bachelor party, and he gets abducted. So he has a fight with a Sentinel kind of looking thing that has nanobots. So he can't really punch it because it just becomes like liquid. So it's almost like the Liquid Terminator. So we'll see what happens, but of course, whenever somebody's going to get married in a comic, it's always a fiasco. But anyway, they're doing a big deal with that. And of course, they're already setting out wedding invitations for the Batman Catwoman wedding as well. So we'll have a couple of weddings coming up in the summertime. The summer of weddings. Then I have an independent book by Image called Skyward by Joe Henderson. And I went to a signing. As you can see, my book is signed. So I got a little funny story. So we went. I went to the signing, and I had a play afterwards. So I was kind of dressed up. But I was talking to Joe, and he signed my book. And you know, there was a few people walking around the store, and there was an old, two older women. And I didn't talk to them at the time, but of course I noticed them because there was only 30 people in the store, something to that effect. So I went from there. I went straight to my play that was all the way in Pasadena. So I live in the Valley, and Pasadena was, and for I know it's in the rest of the nation. It's not very long, but it was over 25 miles. So it's for LA. It's not a half hour like it would be normally, especially at night. It was more like an hour. So it's a bit of a drive. And here were these two same women again from the comic shop. So I finally said, hey, I think I just saw you at the comic shop. They said, yeah, we thought the same thing. And I introduced myself, and it ends up being Joe Henderson's mom. So how odd is that we ended up going to the same play an hour away and ended up being the writer's mom. So anyway, this is a little story. Now, as far as the book, I don't have much an opinion on it. The artwork's good, the characters are good, but the storyline is odd. And I think he knows it's odd because he kind of, said, stated the plot line, and everyone, so the storyline is everybody flies. I mean, that's the basic bottom line. So when the main character was a child or a baby, Earth's gravity changed, and people are no longer walking on the ground. So when this change happened, it was immediate. It wasn't gradual, and her mom basically flew off into the atmosphere and died. So her dad is, raised her, and she became very adept at flying. Running around the walls and stuff like that. But it still is that danger where you could go out into the atmosphere, and that's why it's called Skyward, is because there's no gravity, so everything floats around. So I really don't know what the plot line is, but that's the log line for the world. So anyway, okay. Next we have. I'm not sure if I'll collect that or not. Star Trek Gold. I'll probably take a look at the second issue just to see where they go with it. This storyline, which if you notice on it, it says IDIC, which was the storyline, and it's been going on now for this is part 6. So yeah, so it's again it's an IDW book. It started out good, and what I say IDIC stands for is I don't know, I don't care. So it started out good, and then it got really, like the first issue was good, and then it just got horrible. Just horrible writing. So what intrigued me was that they were doing a different timeline where they would kind of gender swap. So Kirk it was all women. So the women were all women, and the guys were all women, and Uhura was a guy. I'm like, okay, this is kind of interesting. And then they went off, and Kirk was also a Klingon. They were doing like a bunch of little storylines, and I didn't know what was going on. I was intrigued, and then it just then they were plants, and I don't know. Kirk was a plant, and he was having plants. I don't know what the hell they were doing. It was just a really bad book, but I continued reading it for 6 issues, and it ended up that the whole thing was Gary Mitchell. So Gary Mitchell's from the original series, that godlike powers, and it was in the very first. It wasn't the pilot. I guess it was the pilot with Kirk in it. Because Kirk wasn't the original Starship Enterprise captain. Star Trek originally started with Pike. But with the first Kirk episode, Gary Mitchell was the character, and so now he gives Kirk a little bit of his godlike power so they can play chess with all these people's lives. So anyway, he ends up beating Gary Mitchell by losing on purpose, so that Gary Mitchell can say that he was superior, and and everybody can go on with their regular lives. Anyway, not a good book. I do suggest you not picking it up. I'll do a report on when we do with the next storyline, but this storyline was very, very, very bad. Very bad. And now I will be going into my rant. So, Aquaman, number 35. Love this book. I'm a huge Aquaman fan, and as all of my friends will attest, I'm obviously too big a fan, because them messing with it in the way of Jason Momoa has really irked me. So this is Aquaman. This is not Aquaman. This is Khal Drogo with metal gear on. So he doesn't look like Aquaman, and he doesn't act like Aquaman. Aquaman is a regal. Even before he was King of Atlantis, he still acted regal. He didn't say, "My man, oh, I dig it." I don't know what all this is with the eye makeup, and and the tattoos, and everything that they're doing with it is just wrong. Just wrong. In fact, I boycotted Justice League in the theaters. I did not go see it because of, which thankfully so, because it was just awful. But on top of that, they just destroyed Aquaman in it, which I do not understand, because Jeff Johns rebooted Aquaman to the point where it became a very, very, very popular book. So he spent all this time rebooting a character that was made fun of, and it became just a great book. And they actually did an offshoot called Aquaman and the Others, because the character became popular again. And then, with him at the helm, supposedly, he decides to go off and do Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I just do not understand it. And of course, he's fired now off the movies anyway. After he did that, he did the same thing with Green Lantern, though. So he rebooted Green Lantern. That was what got basically garnered his career was Green Lantern, and then he helmed the Green Lantern movie, which was a complete disaster. And then they put him on the Justice League, and complete disaster. Along with Snyder in this case, but 2 disasters. So thankfully they fired him and fired everybody. However, we're left with this Aquaman movie coming up. And I am so disappointed with it already. So, and I'll tell you what the storyline is with what's going on, and I'm okay with the beard in the comic right now because it has a purpose. So, but if they keep the beard after to make him look like Jason Momoa, I'm going to be stop collecting the book I love, which is, you know, which is unfortunate. So anyway, the storyline started in 25, in Aquaman number 25, where Wrath, R-A-T-H, took over Atlantis and ousted Aquaman from his throne. Meanwhile, he and Mera are about to get married. She was about to become queen. They were having problems with her being queen, etc. And because she comes from a different part of Atlantis that was kind of feuding. So, in fact, I think originally she was supposed to kill Aquaman, and then she fell in love with him. So, but anyway, I actually, if they would have made an Mera movie instead, I thought Amber Heard did a good job, even though I have no idea whether she had to create a bubble for them to talk in the movie, because they talk by telepathy. I like to see what... I'm not going to see the movie, but I want somebody to tell me how they communicate. You know, they can go indoors. They can breathe air just like they can breathe water. So I don't know why they didn't do that scene in an indoor area instead of having a bubble. But anyway, so Aquaman is... Merc is supposed to assassinate Aquaman, takes him out, and doesn't kill him. So time passes, and this vigilante shows up because now Wrath has basically taken over and become a dictator. So he has his own army and stuff like that, and areas outside of Atlantis that are, you know, more slum-like or whatever else, that are, you know, kind of ganglandy. But that's where, you know, people have the lower class live, I guess. But anyway, he basically becomes Aquaman, the vigilante, and starts, you know, beating butts for, you know, of Wrath's people. But he's not. Everybody thinks that Arthur's dead, so, you know, they just call him the Aquaman. So anyway, he grows a beard so that people don't recognize him as easily. Okay, I can buy that. So if he has a beard for right now, I'm good with it because it has a storyline significance. So now in this issue, so Mera's got her own thing going on. I'm going to report on that next week because she is going to become queen whether he's king or not. So they're trying to push Mera into being queen and taking over for Wrath. And meanwhile, Arthur is battling because Wrath put up this big bubble around Atlantis, so it was basically self-contained. So he's kind of garnered all of the gangland mercenaries and things like that to help him battle Wrath. Except Wrath has now invoked this evil magic, which, you know, the magic users of Atlantis have not been happy about. And he's invoked everything so that he's becoming all-powerful. And now Merc and Aquaman were fighting, even though Merc used to be his friend and the leader of his army. And Merc is like, I can't have you be king, you're too weak, I don't want him being king, I don't want you being king. And Aquaman's like, I don't care, I don't want to be king anyway. He says, I just need to get this guy out, so let's just team up. So that's how that particular piece ended. And then they tried to battle, but all of the Senate, you know, of Atlantis finally team up, and they say, we got to get this guy out of office, and they go to confront him, and that's when all things go bad, and that was the last few pages, so I won't go into that. But anyway, Aquaman, great book. We'll see what happens with it. Hopefully it will not turn into Jason Momoa as Aquaman. If they were smart, though, they'd wait, because if Justice League was a smashing success, then, you know, maybe they could start altering the characters. Although Marvel doesn't. Captain America still looks like Captain America and things post Avengers. Thor doesn't look anything like what's in the movies. In fact, he has a metal arm because his arm got cut off. In fact, he doesn't even have the hammer at this point. Oh, that was the other thing too about X-Men too. I saw Storm had a hammer. I thought that was kind of strange. If anybody knows anything about that, let me know too. But if DC and Warner Brothers were smart, they would not change the comics till they see how the movie does, because we all know it's going to fail. They should know it's going to fail too. So if Wonder Woman could not save Justice League, Aquaman cannot be saved by it. So it's just going to be ignored. So to change the comics now to match that would be a mistake, and I hope they can see that. But anyway, so if he continues to look more and more like Jason Momoa, I will stop collecting it, which means I will not be reporting on it. But anyway, that ends my rant, my Aquaman rant. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. Subscribe, and I will be doing probably a film this week, and I think Avengers is this week. I'm not sure. And then I'll be doing comics next week. All right, bye guys.